Of the Honorable Senate President and the Senators of the Republic.
Wala. Ongoing na yun. The 69th session of the Senate and the first regular session of the 19th Congress is hereby called to order. We will be led in prayer today by Distinguished Majority Floor Leader, Senator Joel Villanueva.
Let's put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. In Psalms chapter 91, verse 1 to 4, it says, "He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my rock and my refuge, my God, in whom will I trust. Surely He shall deliver me from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover me with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler." Heavenly Father, we come to you humbling ourselves, knowing that without you, we can do nothing. Apart from you, we are nobody. But because you are with us, indeed no one and nothing, no circumstances here on earth can be against us. Today, as we open this session, we ask for the forgiveness of our sins. Cleanse us with your most precious blood shed in the Calvary, and help us to be your representatives here in this august chamber. Today, we ask for your treasury of wisdom to be upon each and every one of us as we do our job and as we help each and every Filipino, not only inside this country, but also outside of the Philippines. We ask you that you bless the works of our hands, bless every family represented here today, bless our leaders in government, bless our Senate President, bless our President, our Vice President, and all the institutions and agencies of the government. Into your hands we commend everything as we carefully give back to you all the glory, all the honor, and all the praise in the name that is above every name. In the name of Jesus Christ we pray. Everybody agree and say amen.
Amen. We are lucky today to have with us the Himig Rosenia of Coleo de Santa Rosa, Makati, the area of Senator Binay. We'll be singing and leading us in the singing rather of the Philippine National Anthem, and after which they will render a song called Ordi, arranged by Maria Teresa Visconde Roldan.
Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, alab ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyod ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka masisiin, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy, sa langit mong bughaw, may dilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang isap ng matawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning, ang bituin ng araw ng kailan, magmay di magdidilim, lupa ng araw ng buwan, ating pagsinta, buhay ay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya ng pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the Colegio de Santa Rosa Makati choir. And the title of the song rather is Ordee. I said Ordee. I'm Bisaya, that's why I said it is Ordee. Secretary, please to call the roll of members. Once again, thank you very much.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Angara, Senator Binay, Senator Cayetano Alan, Senator Cayetano Pia, Senator De La Rosa, Senator Ejercito, Senator Escudero, Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lapid, Senator Legarda, Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator Villar Mark, the Senate President.
With 20 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader, before we act on official business, we just
Yes.
like to greet.
I was about to say, Mr. President,
Our
that
colleague.
our colleague, the chairperson of the Senate Committee on Tourism and Senate Committee on Accounts, Senator Nancy Binay, celebrated her birthday last Friday, May 12,
Her 40th.
her 40th, Mr. President.
Her 40th
That's what
birthday.
she wants to say. We wish her happy birthday, and to all mothers, a happy Mother's Day yesterday, Mr. President. May I ask for a minute suspension so we can
Yes.
meet them, Mr. President? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before we continue, may I just be allowed to acknowledge some guests from the gallery? We have with us His Excellency Luc Veron, European Union Ambassador to the Philippines. We also have with us, Mr. President, Congressman Nery Colmenares, and also, Mr. President, NEDA Secretary R.C. Balisacan, Attorney Elmore Capule from Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, National Treasurer Rosalia De Leon, Chairperson Emilio Aquino of SEC, Senior Vice President Gonzalo Bongolan and other senior officials of Land Bank, Assistant VP Maylin Peras of DBP, AVP Elise Galvan of DBP, DBM USEC Leo Angelo Larcia, NEDA USEC Crystal Uy, DOF USEC Alu Dorotan, and
Yes,
we just
she-
have with us
by the way,
Secretary
she's,
Jokno. Secretary
I
Jokno.
was about to say Secretary Jokno is here, and
DOF is already in the building, Mr. President.
I have not spoken to Secretary Jokno yet for pirating our top staff in the Senate. Yusek
I was
Rotan, welcome to the Senate.
I was about to question, Mr. President, that DOF USEC Alu Dorotan, Mr. President, because anyway, Mr. President, we also have with us members of the Philippine Women's National Football Team. Maya Taylor Alcantara, Alicia Barker, Sophia Nicole Harrison, Holly Moraya Long, Olivia Davis McDaniel, Chandler Blue McDaniel, Ina Christian Palacios. They're accompanied by Mr. Mariano Araneta Jr., President of Philippine Football Federation, Attorney Edwin Gastanes, Mr. Jefferson Cheng, Team Manager, Ms. Neil Ann Casalmer, Assistant Team Manager, Isabel Fernando, and Sidef Tupas. We welcome all of them in this August chamber, Mr. President.
Welcome to the Senate. Gentlemen and ladies, welcome to your Senate.
Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 68th session, Wednesday, May 10, 2023, and consider the same as approved.
There be no objection, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before we proceed with the third reading, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Maybe just to...
I withdraw, Mr. President, that
Yes.
motion. Instead, Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the third reading, Mr. President, and vote on this particular measure. I move to consider on third reading Senate Bill number 1480. This is the bill on rationalizing the disability pension of veterans. Printed copies of the bill were electronically distributed to the members on May 9, 2023, in compliance with the 3-day rule in the Constitution. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, we ask the Secretary to please proceed with the roll call vote.
An act rationalizing the disability pension of veterans, amending for the purpose RA 6948. An act standardizing and upgrading the benefits for military veterans and their beneficiaries as amended. Roll call vote. The Honorable Senator Angara, Senator Binay, Senator Cayetano Alan, Senator Cayetano Pia, Senator De La Rosa, Senator Ejercito, Senator Escudero, Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lapid, Senator Ligarda, Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator Villar Mark, the Senate President.
Yes. With 21 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, Senate Bill number 1480 is approved on third reading. Congratulations to the sponsor and authors.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We congratulate our dear colleague, the chairperson of the Committee on National Defense, who is also seeking the floor, Mr. President. I move that Senator Jinggoy Estrada be recognized.
Distinguished gentleman from the city of San Juan, Senator Estrada is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. This is to express my sincere gratitude to my dear colleagues for lending support to this measure, which I truly feel is long overdue. Our veterans who sustained disabilities and injury in the line of duty have long waited for this legislation to update the monthly disability pension rates, which have remained unchanged for 29 years. Thank you to our chairperson of the Committee on Finance and co-author of this measure, Senator Sani Angara. To our distinguished minority floor leader, Senator Coco Pimentel, for helping the sponsor in refining provisions of this measure. Also to the members of this august chamber who are co-authors and co-sponsors of this bill, Majority Floor Leader Senator Villanueva, Senate President Pro Temp Senator Loren Legarda, Senator Lito Lapid, Senator Cynthia Villar, and our National Defense Committee Vice Chairperson Senator Francis Tolentino, Senator Bongo, Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr., Senator Bato de la Rosa, and Senator Robin Padilla. I am proud to be a part of the Senate under the leadership of our Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri, which truly cares for the welfare of the Filipino people. This legislation is one way of honoring our military and war veterans who served and defended the country in their prime, and ensuring that in their twilight years, they and their families are accorded adequate benefits and assistance. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Our dear sponsor, Senator Estrada.
Mr. President, Senator Bato de la Rosa, the distinguished gentleman from the great region of Davao and the province of Bohol, Mr. President, is seeking the floor. I move that he be recognized.
Madyong hapon sa aton Boholano. And from Davao, we recognize Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa.
Thank you, Mr. President and Majority Leader. Mr. President, today's approval of the measure on rationalizing the disability pension of veterans is a testament that the government has not and will never forget the sacrifices of our veterans. They have risked their own lives for us to have the freedom we all enjoy today. As a former military officer and police officer, I have witnessed their gallantry, unselfishness, and love for the country. No amount of monetary compensation can ever reward their service and dedication. However, let us not deny our heroes of the compensation and appreciation they so rightfully deserve. To show our gratitude, we should ensure that our veterans receive a pension that will be adequate for their everyday needs, which include medical. The enactment into law of this bill will help them get by constantly rising prices of basic commodities and medicines. As I have mentioned numerous times, hindi matutumbasan ng kahit anong salapi ang sakripisyo ng ating mga veterano. It is my hope that through this measure, we can at least continuously honor their sacrifices which gave us peace and stability today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, our distinguished colleague, Senator Bato de la Rosa.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We also have with us, and we'd like to acknowledge the presence of DBM Secretary Mina Pangandaman, Mr. President.
Yes, Secretary Pangandaman is recognized. Thank you.
Thank you,
For being
Mr.
with us.
President. Mr. President, as mentioned a while ago, the members of Philippine Women's National Football Team are here, Mr. President. Maya Taylor Alcantara, Alicia Barker, Sophia Nicole Harrison, Holly Moraya Long, Olivia Davis McDaniel, Shander Blue McDaniel, Ina Christian Palacios. I'm sorry if I have to mention their names again, Mr. President. I'm an avid fan, Mr. President. And at this juncture, and with the permission of the body, I move to consider proposed Senate Resolution number 50, taking into consideration proposed Senate Resolution numbers 51, 54, 57, 62, 88, 89, and 117. And for the Secretary General to read the title of the measure. This is the resolution commemorating the Philippine Women's National Football Team. So move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, the Secretary can read the title of the measure so we can proceed to sponsor.
Resolution congratulating and commending the Philippine Women's National Football Team for winning the Women's Championship of the ASEAN Football Federation held last July 17, 2022 at Rizal Memorial Stadium, Manila.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we recognize our colleague from the great city of Taguig and Pateros, Senator Pia Cayetano, to deliver her sponsorship speech.
Our distinguished colleague from the city of Taguig and Pateros and the Republic of the Philippines, Senator Pia Cayetano, our resident athlete.
Athlete, Mr. President.
Yes, a true athlete is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. A minute suspension to less than a minute to just set up the slide presentation.
Okay, session suspended.
Mr. President, I'm told that we're having technical difficulties. I wanted to show photos of the players in action, but in the interest of time, I will proceed with my speech, and then I have asked that they just show whatever photos they're able to manage to upload as I proceed with the speech, Your Honor. Mr. President, I rise to sponsor Senate Resolution number 88 and 89, which I filed last August 2022. So you are almost 1 year late in having the honor, having the Senate give you honor, but better late than never. Both resolutions commend and congratulate the Philippine Women's National Football Team, also known as the Filipinas, for their achievements. Making Philippine sports history by winning in 2 major football tournaments with historic results. And I don't even know if this is up to date when I say 2, because this is based on the resolution, as I said, that I filed last year. So as the Majority Floor Leader has read into the record, we have members of the Filipinas team present, and we have also present the team, the men and women who have been supporting this team, the team led by PFF President Nonong Araneta and Attorney Edwin Gastanes, and of course their team manager, Jefferson Cheng. On that note, Mr. President, let me just include some of the highlights of their career. The Filipinas qualified for the 2023 Women's FIFA World Cup. This is a first in Philippine history, both in the men's and women's team. Often, Mr. President, we need to correct reports because many times, and I'm not just talking for women's football, but many times there will be announcements, even internationally, not just locally, about achievements of certain male football players. And of course, they have achieved many things as well. But then they forget to take into consideration that many times the women have already achieved that. But usually late in recognizing that these women have achieved these milestones. And mapapansin lang after ulit banggitin na the men have achieved this. So women athletes are used to that, but I commend our team and the men and women who support them precisely because they have dreamt their dreams and have now made it part of history that we have qualified for the Women's FIFA World Cup. So the qualifying match, they won against Chinese Taipei in the AFC Women's Asian Cup quarterfinals in India. And this is the first time, as I said, that any Philippine football team has secured a spot in this prestigious football tournament. They entered the semifinals of the Asian Football Confederation Women's Asian Cup for the first time ever. As of March 24, 2023, FIFA reported that the Philippines earned their highest standing to date, ranked 49 in the women's football in the whole world. Ranked 49. Saan kayo nanggaling 2 years ago, out of curiosity? 76. So 76. Eh nung bata ka pa, nung nagpo-football ka, ano ranking? Wala pang ranking.
No ranking yet.
No ranking yet. So we're now ranked 49. They won the Philippines' first ever championship title at the Women's ASEAN Football Federation AFF Championship. This is the one that was held here? Yes, which I watched. In July 2022, the Filipinas were crowned as the AFF Women's Championship following their victory against Thailand. First time ever that the Philippine football team, either men's or women, has won a title under the AFF banner. They beat then defending champion title holder Vietnam during their semifinals match. So in preparation for the 2023 FIFA World Cup, that will be held in Australia and New Zealand from July 20 to August 20, wherein the Philippines will compete in New Zealand. The Filipinas have been conducting training camps led by their head coach, Alan Stajcik. As the FIFA Women's World Cup comes closer, the Filipinas have been training hard and joining prestigious football tournaments. My understanding, Your Honors, is that most of the members of the team are members of their own teams in their different clubs, right? So in between tournaments where they play together, they go back home and they compete with their teams, which serves as their continuous training, correct? So, from September to November 2022, the Filipinas joined various international friendlies with teams such as New Zealand, Costa Rica, Chile, and Papua New Guinea. In February 2023, the women's team also debuted in their maiden Pinatar Cup in Spain, where they gained tremendous experience playing against teams from Iceland, Wales, and Scotland. And I had the pleasure of joining them there as their head of delegation. In April 2023, the team battled it out for the Paris 2024 Olympic qualifying tournament versus Pakistan, Tajikistan, and Hong Kong, where they were able to progress to the second round. Their participation in many international friendlies with other teams that have yielded favorable and promising results, sacrificing their time and efforts away from their family and loved ones to prepare for the World Cup is something that is not a stranger to any member of this team and any of their supporting crew. They have and they continue to endure long training hours that we can only imagine. Mr. President, the Filipinas and other female athletes have served as an inspiration for the country. They have achieved what would have been considered impossible only a few years ago. This is an accomplishment not just for Philippine sports, but for Philippine women and for Philippine athletes. Hard work, dedication, and passion for the sport are the building blocks for reaching goals, dreams, and successes. Many of these athletes many if not all have started very young. They have been able to harness their passion into really a craft. They have the discipline and they have what it takes to work together as a team to accomplish their goals. They bring pride and honor to the country and inspired athletes, not just in the country, but worldwide. Congratulations to the Filipinas. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Congratulations to the Filipinas team. They bring pride to the Philippines. One of the best women's football teams of the world. We congratulate all of you. We watch you. We actually watch your games here in the lounge when you play together with Senator Cayetano. And Nonong has been a good friend of mine. Sir Nono has been a good friend of mine. We're together in the POC. My team is actually playing Arnis right now as we speak. That's why I'm very nervous and anxious because I had to come home last night from Cambodia. They're also fighting. We have a lot of athletes, Majority Leader, right now fighting for God and country in Cambodia. Good news is we've already overtaken Singapore. So we are now number 5. And if we do a bit more, maybe if we all can contribute some more, all the other NOCs, the NSAs, we might be able to come close to Cambodia. We'll see for number 4, but we're trying our best.
Mr. President, if I may, Mr. President, may I be allowed to co-sponsor the measure?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you,
Majority.
Mr. President. This will just be quick and I don't want them to be standing behind me for so long, Mr. President. It is my honor and privilege to co-sponsor the resolutions congratulating and commending the Philippine Women's National Football Team for their victory at the ASEAN Football Federation Women's Championship held last July 17, 2022. This representation, Mr. President, also filed Senate Resolution number 54, congratulating our national team for this incredible and historic feat. Earlier last year, Mr. President, the Filipinas team made football history when they secured a spot in the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup, which will be held this July in Australia and New Zealand. In addition, the team is now ranked 49th in the latest FIFA Women's World Ranking released last March, their highest ranking to date, Mr. President. Indeed, our Filipinas team deserves all the support, praise, and commendation of the entire nation for these historic feats. We wish them all the best and we will be cheering again, Mr. President, and praying for the entire team when they compete in the upcoming World Cup. Muli, Ginoong Pangulo, binabati po natin ang Filipinas Women's National Football Team. Mabuhay po kayo. Mabuhay ang mga atletang Pilipino. Thank you, Mr. President. This juncture, I move that we recognize Senator Bong Revilla to co-sponsor the measure.
Our distinguished colleague from the great province of Cavite, Senator Bong Revilla, is recognized.
Mr. President, I join our colleagues in congratulating and commending our Philippine Women's National Football Team for their victory at the ASEAN Football Federation held last July 17, 2022. Their win has placed the country among the ranks of the best in football in Southeast Asia and the world after successfully defeating Thailand, a 4-time champion in the said event. Kahanga-hanga ang kanilang unang pagkapanalo sa nasabing tagisan. We recognize the strength, Filipino athletes, and the resilience of their spirit. They are living testaments that our potential for greatness is set in motion if we work passionately and diligently on it. The seeds of their hard work that they have planted, they are are the very fruits that they are now harvesting. Hindi biro ang hamon ng ating mga atleta, ngunit pinatunayan nilang hindi ito hadlang upang magtagumpay. Mabuhay ang atletang Pilipina.
Thank you very much, distinguished sponsor.
Mr. President, the chairperson of the Committee on Sports would like to co-sponsor the measure. I move that Senator Bongo be recognized.
Our distinguished colleague who was with me in Cambodia cheering on for the Philippine team, Senator Bongo, Christopher Bongo, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Congratulations kay Senator Joel. Nalo yung nag-advance na sa Western Conference Finals.
Alam ko ba naman na Philippine team, Celtics na ba?
Hindi. Para
Boston
masaya naman si Majority Floor Leader.
I think he's referring to the latest win of the Philippine Senate Sentinels.
Ah,
in the
Sentinels.
UNTV
Correct,
Cup, Mr.
correct,
President. I think that's what
Correct.
he's referring, Mr. President.
Best player tayong tatlo. Hindi, iba rin yung kay Senator Joel, Celtics. Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, as chairman of the Committee on Sports, it is with great pride and honor that I co-sponsor today the Senate resolution congratulating and commending the Filipinas football team for winning the Women's Championship of the ASEAN Football Federation, AFF. The Philippine women's football team has made us all proud through their dedication, hard work, and passion, which have led them to capture their first and historic win in the 2022 ASEAN Football Federation Women's Championship after taking a decisive win over the Thailand War Elephants last July 17, 2022. This feat signifies the maiden triumph of the country under the AFF banner, and I take great pride in acknowledging their achievement today in this esteemed chamber. I also congratulate the team for qualifying in the 2023 Women's FIFA World Cup following their historic quarterfinal win in India. Their unwavering commitment to excellence has inspired us all and has surely made a lasting impact in the history of Philippine football. It bears stressing that their victory is a testament of the Filipinos' unrelenting competitiveness in international sporting competitions. Rest assured that all of us in the government will fight for the rights and welfare of Filipino athletes as part of our ongoing efforts to restore the Philippines' glory in sports and cement our status as a sports powerhouse in Asia. Sa katunayan po, lumipad kami papuntang Cambodia ni Senate President Mig Subiri at Senator Tolentino para panoorin ang ating mga atleta na lumalahok sa 2023 Southeast Asian Games. Nandun po tayo to uplift their spirit and boost their morale para lumakas ang kanilang kumpiyansa. Nandito po ang ating gobyerno na sila po ay sinusuportahan. Makakaasa po kayo na ipagpatuloy ko ang pagsulong sa mga programa at panukala na tutulong mapalakas ang grassroots sports program sa ating bansa na direktang susuporta sa ating mga atleta. Once again, I would like to extend my sincerest congratulations to the Filipinas football team. We look forward to seeing you continue to excel as you make your mark in the international sporting scene. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bongo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Go. Mr. President, Senator Lauren Ligarda would like to insert into the records her co-sponsorship speech. I just wanted to manifest that, Mr. President.
We take note.
Yes, Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that all members of the Senate be made co-authors of this resolution.
There being no objection, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, no other member wishes to interpolate or propose amendments to the measure. I move that we adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 50, taking into consideration proposed Senate Resolution numbers 51, 54, 57, 62, 89, and 117, and PSR 88, subject to style. I so move, Mr. President.
There be no objection to the motion, proposed Senate Resolution number 50, taking consideration all aforementioned resolutions, is hereby approved and adopted by the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President.
So we have to-
Congratulations.
Do
And
we
I
suspend?
move that we suspend session so we can allow the recipients of our
Session
accommodation.
suspended for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, move that we proceed with the reference of business. So move, Mr. President.
While we are waiting the sponsors to finish their sumptuous merienda there, not thinking about us in the floor, let us proceed with the reference of business, there being no objection. Thank you. But we are thinking of them, and I hope they're thinking of us.
Yes. And I hope there's lots of,
Food left.
Water, glass of water, Mr. President.
Thank you. Please proceed, Secretary.
Bills on first reading, Senate number 2137, mandating all government departments, bureaus, offices, agencies, and instrumentalities, including LGUs and GOCCs, to source a minimum percentage of the electricity from renewable energy and for other purposes, Senator Lapid.
Before I answer that, I just won one more gold for our niece. Yeah. Very, very happy. You heard that, Majority Leader? We just won one gold right now. Thank you very much. Therefore, I refer the motion of the Secretary to the Committee on Energy, Civil Service, Ways and Means and Finance.
2138, promoting the use of renewable energy technology in homes and strengthening the implementation of the net metering program, amending RA 9513, Senator Lapid.
To the Committee on Energy.
2139, enhancing voting accessibility for senior citizens, persons with disabilities, and pregnant women, amending RA 10366, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Villanueva.
To the Committee on Electoral Forms and Finance.
2140, establishing the standards for a living wage, amending Article 1204 of PD 442, Senator Villanueva.
To the Committee on Labor and Employment.
2141, declaring August 9 of every year as the Philippines-Israel Friendship Day, Senator Villanueva.
Committees on Culture and Arts and Foreign Relations.
2142, increasing the hazard pay of all personnel of the AFP to 25% of their base pay and providing funds therefore, Senator Estrada.
Committees on National Defense and Finance.
2143, establishing evacuation centers in every city and municipality, appropriating funds therefore, Senator Estrada.
To the Committees on National Defense, Public Works and Finance.
2144, strengthening the right of government to expropriate lands for socialized housing, amending sections 9 to 11 of RA 7279, Senator Estrada.
To the Committee on Urban Planning and Housing.
2145, providing for a comprehensive and rationalized grant of rewards of informers for the discovery of violations of Internal Revenue and Customs laws, Senator Estrada.
To the Committee on Ways and Means and Finance.
2146, promoting open access and data transmission and providing additional powers to the National Telecommunications Commission, Senator Estrada.
Committee on Science and Technology and Public Services.
2147, enhancing the competitiveness of the Philippine maritime trade by strengthening the oversight functions of the relevant government agencies over the imposition of shipping charges by international shipping lines and institutionalizing mechanisms for efficient movement of goods, Senator Estrada.
To the Committee on Public Services, Trade and Commerce and Entrepreneurship.
2148, creating a VAT refund mechanism for non-resident tourists, adding for the purpose a new section 112-8 to the NIRC as amended, Senator Estrada.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
2149, amending Article 179 of the RPC by increasing the penalty provided therefore and for other purposes, Senator Estrada.
To the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
2150, strengthening the powers and functions of the Intellectual Property Office, amending RA 8293 as amended, Senator Estrada.
To the Committee on Trade, Commerce and Entrepreneurship.
2151, amending RA 493 to include in the coverage of prohibition the use, wearing, manufacture, and sale of uniforms and textile of uniforms of the members of the AFP and the PNP, prescribing steeper penalties for violation thereof and for other purposes, Senator Estrada.
Refer to the Committees on National Defense and Security, Peace and Unification and Reconciliation, and Public Order and Dangerous Drugs.
2152, providing for the modernization of the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Estrada.
Refer to Committees on Science and Technology, Ways and Means and Finance.
2153, declaring the immediate environs of Our Lady of the Most Holy Rosary Parish Church located in Rosario, Cavite, a tourism destination, Senator Revilla Jr.
Refer to Committees on Tourism and Finance.
2154, declaring the immediate environs of St. Mary Magdalene Parish Church in Kawit, Cavite, a tourism destination, Senator Revilla Jr.
Refer to Committees on Tourism and Finance.
2155, declaring the immediate environs of San Roque Parish Church, also known as Diocesan Shrine of Nuestra Señora de la Soledad de Porta Vaga, in Cavite, Province of Cavite, a tourism destination, Senator Revilla Jr.
Refer to Committees on Tourism and Finance.
2156, providing for the modernization of the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, providing funds therefore for other purposes, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to Committees on Science and Technology, Ways and Means, and Finance.
2157, requiring the employment of qualified lifeguards in all public swimming pools and bathing facilities and providing penalties for violations thereof, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to Committees on Trade, Commerce and Entrepreneurship, and Local Government.
2158, providing for the right of married women to retain their maiden surnames, amending Article 370 of RA 386 as amended, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to Committees on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality.
2159, extended the period of availment of the estate tax amnesty, amending RA 11213 as amended, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to Committee on Ways and Means.
2160, creating a district engineering office in the 5th Legislative District of Batangas and appropriating funds therefore, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
2161, renumbering the Cebu 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th District Engineering Offices to conform and correspond respectively with the numbering of the legislative districts in the province of Cebu, thereby repealing RA 9043 and 9218, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to Committee on Public Works.
2162, mandating the full rehabilitation, upgrading, and maintenance of Roman Superhighway in the province of Bataan, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
2163, renaming Agham Road on NBIR Road located in Quezon City as Senator Miriam P. Defensor Santiago Avenue, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to Committee on Public Works.
2164, providing for the modernization of the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Tolentino.
Referred to Committees on Science and Technology, Ways and Means, and Finance.
2166, increasing the bed capacity of the Wao District Hospital, Lanao del Sur from 25 to 100 beds, amending RA 3607, appropriating funds therefore, Senator Marcos.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
2167, establishing a test dot training and assessment center in Tubod, Lanao del Sur, to be known as Tubod Test dot Training and Assessment Center, appropriating funds therefore, Senator Marcos.
Referred to Committees on Higher, Technical and Vocational Education, and Finance.
2168, an act to designate the 4th day of May of every year a special working holiday to be known as the National Firefighters Day, mandating the Bureau of Fire Protection conduct events during its observance to appropriate funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Lapid.
Referred to Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, and Finance.
2169, granting senior citizens a minimum of 5% discount on the first 150 kilowatt hours of electricity consumption and on the first 50 cubic meters of water consumption, and an exemption from the VAT, amending RA 9994 by Senator Lapid.
Referred to Committees on Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development, and Ways and Means.
2170, extending the coverage and period of availment of the estate tax amnesty, amending RA 11213 as amended. Senators Zubiri, Legarda, and Villanueva.
Referred to Committee on Ways and Means.
Resolutions. Proposed Senate Resolution 596, congratulating and commending the Philippine National Baseball Team for securing their 4th consecutive championship at the 13th Baseball Federation East Asian Cup held in Pathum Thani, Thailand on May 4, 2023, Senator Lapid.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
597, commending and recognizing the Philippine men's ice hockey team for their impressive win in the 2023 IIHF World Championship, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
598, recognizing and commending the National Youth Weightlifting Team for their impressive medal haul at the 2023 International Weightlifting Federation World Youth Championships, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
599, congratulating and recognizing Filipino bowler Merwin Tan for being the champion in the 2023 Professional Bowlers Association Bowlers Academy Open held last March 24-26 in California, USA, Senator Revilla Jr.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
600, commending and congratulating Bianca Bustamante for being the first Filipina to win an official FIA-sanctioned single-seater race, Senator Ontiveros.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
601, directing an inquiry in aid of legislation into the pricing practices of energy generation companies which may be violative of RA 9136 and other relevant laws and regulations with the end in view of recommending further measures to promote enforcement and compliance with relevant laws and regulations, Senator Tulfo.
Referred to Committees on Energy, and Trade and Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
602, urging the Senate Committee on Health and Demography and or appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in the exercise of oversight function on the establishment of veterans wards as mandated by RA 6948 and upgrading the benefits for military veterans and their dependents as amended by RA 7696, Senator Estrada.
Referred to Committee on National Defense and Security, Peace, Unification, and Reconciliation.
603, congratulating and commending the national powerlifting team for their stellar performance at the 2023 Asian Equipped Powerlifting Championships in Alappuzha, India. Senator Legarda.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
604, congratulating and commending Jamie Christine Berberabelim for her exceptional performance in winning the gold medal in the Women's Karate Committee 61 kilogram category at the 32nd Southeast Asian Games in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Senator Legarda.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
605, directing the Senate Committee on Tourism to conduct an inquiry on the possible adverse effects of the Kaliwa Dam project to the tourism industry in Panay Rizal. Senator Binay.
Referred to Committees on Tourism and Public Works.
606, congratulating and commending the Philippine National Women's Obstacle Course Racing Team for winning the gold medal and setting a new world record at 32nd Southeast Asian Games in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Senator Legarda.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
607, directing the appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry on the successive electric transmission system disturbances with the end in view of ensuring reliable and continuous electric power supply in the country. Senator Gatchalian.
Referred to Committee on Energy.
Additional reference of business. Message from the House. Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 8 May 2023, it passed the following House bill in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. 7751. Establishing specialty centers in hospitals under the direct supervision and control of the DOH and appropriating funds therefore.
Referred to Committees on Health and Demography and Finance.
7393, regulating the use of financial accounts.
Referred to Committees on Banks, Financial Institutions and Currencies, and Justice and Human Rights.
7446, promoting transparent governance and ensuring anti-corruption mechanisms in the operation of banks and other financial institutions, amending RA 1405.
Referred to Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies.
7535, granting additional benefits to Filipino centenarians, recognizing octogenarians and nonagenarians and appropriating funds therefore, amending for the purpose RA 10868.
Referred to Committees on Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development and Finance.
7540, strengthening the special program in creative arts for junior and senior high school, appropriating funds therefore.
Referred to Committees on Basic Education, Culture, and the Arts, Ways and Means, and Finance.
7561, providing for mandatory insurance coverage and benefits for all line workers.
Referred to Committees on Energy and Labor, Employment, and Human Resource Development.
7576, providing for early voting by qualified senior citizens, persons with disabilities, lawyers, and human resources for health in national and local elections.
Referred to Committees on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation and Finance.
7584, allowing elementary and secondary learners with unpaid tuition and other school fees to take the periodic and final examinations on good cause and justifiable grounds.
Referred to Committee on Rules.
7620, prescribing the use of neo-ethnic Philippine textiles in the academic regalia of all state and local universities and colleges and appropriating funds therefore.
Referred to Committees on Higher, Technical and Vocational Education, Science and Technology, and Finance. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2021 under Committee Report number 59. This is the bill on institutionalizing the shared service facilities project for MSMEs. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measure is that we have closed the period of interpellations and debate. With that, Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendments.
Is there an objection? There being none, period of amendment is hereby open.
With no committee amendments, I move that we open the period of individual amendments. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize the sponsor of the measure, Senator Sani Angara and Senator Coco Pimentel, our minority leader, for individual amendments. I so move, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're ready
Objection,
to.
there being none, Senator Angara and our minority leader is
Thank you, Mr. President. Majority Leader, we're ready to accept amendments from our colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me start on page 1. So after the first paragraph of section 16, that means after line 9, page 1, after line 9, let us add the following paragraphs which will more or less give us an idea on what the SSF program is, Mr. President. So it goes like this. The SSF program shall entail setting up common service facilities or production centers for certain processes to give MSMEs access to better technology and more sophisticated equipment to accelerate their bid for competitiveness and help them graduate to a next level where they could tap better and wider markets and be integrated in the global supply chain, period. The project may be implemented in cooperation with the DOST and other agencies, the academe, LGUs, and private organizations. That's the first paragraph, Mr. President. And then I'll continue. The second paragraph, which is being proposed to be inserted, is as follows. Shared service facilities refer to machinery, equipment, tools, systems, accessories and other auxiliary items, skills, and knowledge that are being provided by the DTI under a combined and collective system to its target beneficiaries, period.
Mr. President, this being a very good amendment, which rounds off the bill nicely by introducing the concept, which was absent in the committee report. We accept the minority leader's amendments, Mr. President.
So thank you for that, Mr. President. And actually, Mr. President, with the concept and the words we also got from the DTI when they are describing their already existing SSF program. So thank you very much, Mr. President. That would be all from this representative.
Thank you very much, Your Honor, and we recognize your expertise as a former chair of the Committee on Trade, which has helped make the bill much better. Thank you, sir.
We have no objection, Mr. President. It was accepted by the sponsor.
There's no objection. The amendment is approved.
I think you have some, would you like me to read? You have some amendments, Your Honor.
I have an amendment, Mr. President, on page 1, line 11. If I may, Mr. President, after the word DTI, insert a comma and the phrase, in coordination with relevant government agencies, local government units, private institutions, and stakeholders, comma. So the paragraph will now read, the DTI, in coordination with relevant government agencies, local government units, private institutions, and stakeholders, shall also establish SSF fabrication laboratories, SSF-FAB, LABS, which refer to high-end SSFs equipped with an array of flexible computer-controlled tools that cover several different lengths and scale and various materials in at least one strategic location in every province to assist MSMEs in the manufacturing of needed assets and products, period. The priority shall be provinces without existing fab labs, period. I so move, Mr. President.
Mr. President, we accept wholeheartedly the amendment of the majority leader, given that it is a very good amendment that will expand the scope of the program by mentioning the possible stakeholders who will implement or serve as cooperators of the program. So we accept, Mr. President.
So the sponsor accepts the amendment. It's approved.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and also would like to put on record that's the result of the previous interpellations and debates here in the this August chamber, and this will also avoid duplication of functions, such as, for example, DOST also implements community empowerment through science and technology program, whose intervention for livelihood opportunities include innovation, support system, funding, technology, trainings, etc. So thank you again to our distinguished sponsor. Mr. President, our minority leader is seeking the floor. I move that he be recognized.
Thank you.
Minority
Thank you,
leader
Majority
is
Leader.
recognized.
Since the amendment proposed by our majority leader has been accepted, so can I revisit the amendment I made earlier for styling purposes, Mr. President?
Yes, subject to style.
Ang sinabi ko kasi doon, DOST and other agencies. So can we make it DOST and other government agencies?
Yeah.
Because that's already the phrase being used by our the law and also the subsequent amendments.
We
Mr.
accept, Mr. President. We accept. Thank you. And we thank, again, we thank the minority and the majority leader for their very good amendments.
Is there any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
Mr. President, the Senate President Pro Tempore, Senator Lauren Legarda, seeking the floor. I move that she be recognized for her individual amendments.
Our Senate President Pro Tempore, Senator Lauren Legarda, is recognized.
I stay here, but this is only for you. I would like to thank the good chairman of the Committee on Finance for further enhancing a measure that addresses the sustainable recovery and development of our micro, small, and medium enterprises, which is the backbone of our economy, being 99.5% of our local economy. Thank you, Senator Angara. And
Most
thank-
welcome, Your Honor, and it's a very good law, and we thank you for maintaining your concern for the sector despite your many other concerns, advocacies, and interests. Thank you.
Yes. Just for the record, Mr. President, it was in 2007 when we authored the MSME law, because previous to that, it was only small and medium enterprises. And I'm glad that from 2007 and now it's 2023, a provision, the law is being enhanced, and the SSF, which is a government program, which sometimes is funded, sometimes not funded,
Exactly.
will be institutionalized because of this bill of the good chairman of the Committee on Finance. And I hope, being the chairman of the Committee on Finance, he ensures that the DTI will take note of the passage of this measure so that in the NEP, we don't have to amend it in December for the GAA, the SSF nationwide of MSMEs which are recovering from the pandemic will be funded. Wag na pong hihingi sa atin, hihingi, di ba? At para lumapit na may batas, that it could be an unfunded law. And so I addressed this to the Department of Trade and Industry, knowing that the shared services facilities will soon be an institutionalized program by law.
I second all the remarks of our brilliant colleague. I thought she was addressing her remarks to the DBM secretary seated at the back,
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes, I am certain that the DBM secretary
Yeah.
and the NEDA and the DOF, who of course understand this and believe in this, will know that in the NEP, we will not have to ask the DTI to come to us for augmentation in their budget at the end of the year, but will include the SSF because it will soon be institutionalized into a law. Let me just mention, Mr. President, it was Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, I believe, in a committee hearing a few years ago before the pandemic, where, and I joined him, where we saw the SSF budget was only 50 million, Mr. President. When I asked the DTI why, and don't worry, Secretary Pangandaman was not yet DBM Secretary. In fact, she was with my office as Chief of Staff of Budget then. Then we saw SSF was only 50 million. Why? This was right after the Marawi siege. And so, because I have a Maranao who was my consultant then, we immediately increased the budget so that 50 million will be earmarked for victims of the Marawi crisis, and another 200 million will be earmarked for extension programs of state universities and local government universities as cooperators of the DTI, national government, SSF, and the rest of the 1 billion augmentation of the DTI budget would go to other MSMEs. And so let it be said that this was done before but never institutionalized. So I'm grateful to the good sponsor for also allowing me to further enhance his already very good amendments to the Magna Carta for MSME. If I may now proceed with my proposed amendments, Mr. President.
Yes, please proceed.
On page 2, line 15, insert a new paragraph to read as follows. Provided that in granting SSFs and SSF lab fabs, the DTI shall A. timely process the applications for the granting of SSFs and SSF Fab Labs in compliance with the provisions of Republic Act number 11032, the Ease of Doing Business and Efficient Government Service Delivery Act of 2018, on the maximum prescribed processing time depending on the complexity of the transactions, provided that the application has met all the requirements, including, among others, the conduct of market study and other recommendations that may be identified by the National Technical Working Group. B, consult with the cooperators on the appropriate projects to be granted to them. C, ensure that the machinery, equipment, and tools are proper, suitable, usable, and apt with the capabilities and requirements of the facilities. D, coordinate with SUCs and LUCs where the SSF and/or SSF Fab Labs are established in setting guidelines for the equitable utilization of said facilities among users within and outside the educational institutions. E, closely coordinate and immediately assist the cooperators with their issues or concerns regarding the implementation of their projects. And F, partner with other government agencies if needed to help ensure the success of the projects. The rationale for this, Mr. President, this amendment aims to address the many challenges on the ground and the issues faced by the different cooperators, sometimes and oftentimes barangay-based, with respect to the actual implementation of the project. I will no longer state the problems encountered by people in the barangay. I've told this story to the Senate President and to the Majority Leader and the Chairman of the Committee on Finance on experiences of recipients on the ground who are not able to use the equipment and tools because capacity was not built or capital is not available or all of the above. And so with these, or maybe even political, as the good gentleman from Bulacan has stated. So having said that, I hope that this provision, if accepted by the kind sponsor, will address this challenge. I submit, Mr. President.
We accept this very good amendment, which makes more explicit the process and more people-friendly, Your Honor, Mr. President. Thank you.
Since the sponsor accepts, amendment is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. And also on page 2, after the foregoing paragraph, insert a new paragraph to read as follows. Provided further that the DTI shall ensure that the SSFs, SSF Fab Labs created under this act are consistent with the National Innovation Agenda and Strategy document. Again, Mr. President, the rationale for this is this amendment emphasizes the need for coherence and consistency with the programs and policies of the national government, as the National Innovation Agenda and Strategy document is a roadmap for the country's vision and long-term goals for innovation. Again, the Innovation Act is another quite new law that was sponsored, I believe, by Senator Gatchalian a few years ago and authored by this representation after the APEC meeting of 2015. So between the National Innovation Act and this further enhanced Magna Carta for MSME, which includes the SSF, I hope that there can be convergence between and among NEDA, the DTI, and the other government agencies.
We accept, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am grateful to the kind sponsor for his acceptance of my provisions.
Since the sponsor accepted the amendments are
Thank you,
hereby
sir.
approved.
We thank the Senate President Pro Tem for very good amendments, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Yes, if there are,
Just one more amendment, Mr. President, Majority Leader.
yes, may we recognize the sponsor, Mr. President,
The
Senator
sponsor,
Sonny.
Senator Sonny Angara, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, Majority Leader. On page 2, line 23, after the word SSFs, just insert the short phrase and SSF Fab Labs. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
No other amendments. Thank you, Mr. President, Majority Leader, Minority Leader, Senate President Pro Temp, and our other colleagues for their
Thank you,
amendments.
Mr. President. With no other individual amendments, I move to close the period of individual amendments. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, period of individual amendments hereby closed.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I move that we approve on second reading Senate Bill number 2021, subject to style. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. Senate Bill number 2021 is approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2021.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Move for a minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1964 under Committee Report number 40. This is the Kabalikat sa Pagtuturo Act. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, resumption of consideration of Senate Bill number 1964 under Committee Report number 40 is now in order.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measure is that we have closed the period of interpellations and debate. And with that, Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendments. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, with no committee amendments, I move to open the period of individual amendments. So move.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, this juncture, I move that we recognize the sponsor of the measure, the distinguished gentleman from the great province of Cavite, Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr. and Senator Coco Pimentel, our minority leader, for individual amendments.
The sponsor, Senator Revilla, and our minority leader, Senator Coco Pimentel, are recognized.
Okay.
Sino? Page 2.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize our Senate President pro tempore, Senator Lauren Legarda, for her individual amendments.
Our Senate President pro tempore, Senator Lauren Legarda, is recognized.
Thank you very much. Will the kind sponsor allow me to propose some amendments, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you. On page 1, line 12, insert the phrase policy guidelines and after the phrase consistent with the. The rationale for this, Mr. President, is that DepEd Order number 34 provides the directive that starting November 2, 2022, all public and private schools shall have transitioned to 5 days in-person classes. After the said date, no school shall be allowed to implement purely distance learning or blended learning. The transition to 5 days in-person classes entails judgment to the learning modality. Hence, a proposed amendment is putting emphasis on the enforced guidelines and implemented learning modality by the DepEd. I submit, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor have to say?
We accept, Mr. President.
Since the sponsor
Thank you.
accepts, the amendment is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the same page and line, add the word delivery after the word learning and add the acronym LDMs after the word modalities. Again, the rationale for this, for consistency, the bill refers to various learning delivery modalities, LDMs, for the grant of teaching supplies allowance. I submit, Mr. President.
We accept, Mr. President.
Since sponsor accepts, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also on the same page and line, add the word implemented after the word recognized. Again, the rationale is the grant of teaching supplies allowance shall be consistent with a learning delivery modality that is not only recognized by DepEd, but currently implemented. So the whole of Section 3 of Senate Bill 1964 will now read as follows. Section 3, coverage. the grant of the cash allowance authorized in this act shall cover all public school teachers engaged in teaching basic education curriculum consistent with the policy guidelines and learning delivery modalities, LDMs, recognized and implemented by the Department of Education, period. Thank you. I submit, Mr. President.
We accept, Mr. President.
Since amendment is accepted, amendment is approved.
Thank you. On page 2, Mr. President, line 2, delete the phrase learning delivery modalities and the open and close parenthesis in the acronym LDMs. The phrase learning delivery modalities is already abbreviated in the previous section. That's the rationale. And so just delete that learning delivery modalities, just for style, Mr. President.
Sponsor?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Amendment is accepted, amendment is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just a very short query, Mr. President. It says it's 7,500 and then eventually it's 10,000. Previously, there was a chalk allowance. I would assume that the chalk allowance will be subsumed under this new provision, Mr. President, or is a chalk allowance distinct and separate from this?
Yes.
This is
Yes,
already.
it will be subsumed.
It
Yes.
is subsumed. I wonder if there were years when we had allocated under the GAA an amendment where the chalk allowance was even higher than 7,500. And again, I addressed this.
5,000 lang po, Mr.
5,000 is the
President.
maximum.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So that means we are increasing it by 2,500.
To
Uh,
7,500, increasing by 2,500,
Very good. Yes, and eventually 10,000.
and then 10,000.
Okay, because I think it was in 2015 when the chalk allowance, nadagtan po natin na nung tayo po ay naging chairman ng finance. I think 1,000 lang yun or 2,000. Nakakaawa naman po ang ating mga guro. Kaya na-increasean po natin hanggang naging 5,000 piso. And this is annually, di ba po? Isang
That's
taon po ito. So
That's right.
napakaliit po nito. So tayo po yung nagpapasalamat at sa ating chairman na ito po ay nabigyan ng pansin. Una, hindi na rin tamang gamitin yung chalk dahil hindi naman lahat gumagamit ng chalk. Mas maganda yung ginawa niyang titulo na ito. Pangalawa ay eventually madodoble from 7,500 magiging 10,000. So lalaki po itong allowance para sa ating mga mahal na guro. Kaya ako po yung nagpapasalamat sa ating chairman sponsor and thank you, sir, for accepting my humble amendments. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senate President.
Yes,
Professor.
we thank the lady senator from Antique for her insightful inputs to this measure. She's truly luminary in legislation, Mr. President. Thank you, Madam Ganda.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, our minority leader is seeking the floor. I move that Senator Coco Pimentel be recognized for his individual amendments.
The minority leader, Senator Coco Pimentel, is recognized.
Our amendment, Mr. President, will be on page 2, line 4. And the purpose is to delete this provision on automatic adjustment so that the decision to adjust the amount for the teaching supplies allowance will still be left to and retained by Congress, Mr. President. So this is the proposed amendment, Mr. President. On page 2, line 4,
To 11.
yes, lines 4 to 7, delete the phrase provided, comma, that the teaching supplies allowance shall be automatically adjusted to its present value every 3 years to account for the changing prices of teaching supplies and materials and the implementation or conduct of various LDMs. So delete that, and after doing that, we change the remaining colon to a period, Mr. President.
We accept, Mr. President.
Since amendment is accepted, amendment is approved.
That would be the effect of the amendment, Mr. President. Yung adjustment sa amount of the teaching supplies allowance is still with Congress to act on it. So dapat ano tayo, very attentive.
It would mean, Mr. President,
Sensitive.
if I may, every time that there will be an increase, they would have to
Yes.
go to Congress.
Yes, Mr. President. So we just have to be sensitive with the needs of our teachers, and then we have to react. Okay, that's I think that's the role also of the legislature, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr.
That would
President.
be on the 2025, that's correct, 2026.
Mr. President, the effect is that beginning school year 2024-2025, 10,000 pesos po yung teaching supplies allowance, and then subsequent years. But we can review this anytime, Mr. President.
Anyway, that's okay. We accept, Mr. President.
Thank you, our
Thank
minority
you.
leader. Majority leader.
Senator from Cagayan, for all your support. At alam ko palagi ka nandyan, lalo-lalo na para sa ating mga guro. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't see anyone standing on the floor for their individual amendments. So I will now move, Mr. President, to close the period. Oh, wait, Mr. President, Senator Pia Cayetano is seeking the floor. I move that she be recognized, Mr. President.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
A minute suspension, Mr. President, I'll just confer with the sponsor.
Session suspended. Please proceed, Senator Pia.
Thank you, but actually I need the assistance of the majority floor leader because he had the notes on the amendments. Can you share that with me, majority floor leader? Thank you very much.
I will ask Mr. President, the sponsor of the measure, to perhaps read the amendments covering Section 3.
Thank you.
Mr. President, because I have incomplete.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure verbatim, Mr. President, that we'll be able to explain clearly what has been amended in Section 3,
Okay.
which is coverage.
So that's the question first. Let's know the status. What is the current status of Section 3 with the amendments of our colleagues?
Madam, Mr. President, we are deleting the automatic increase adjustment of the bill.
It's not in Section 3. That's not in just Section 3, Your Honor. Just Section 3.
Just a section, okay. The annual medical and physical examination expense.
No, no.
Tama ba?
Section 3.
Line 10, line 10.
1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Mr. President, my understanding regarding the amendments made on Section 3 is that this was qualified that the coverage would be consistent with the policy guidelines and delivery learning modalities recognized by the DepEd. Is that correct, Mr. President?
Yeah, this is the amendment of Senator Lauren
Okay,
Legarda.
sige. So my amendment may not be necessary depending on the answers of our sponsor. The objective here now with the amendment of Senator Lauren is to ensure that the is it correct that the objective here is to ensure that the cash allowance will be used only in accordance with these guidelines and taking into consideration the different deliveries of learning modalities. Is that correct? Yes.
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, so for the record, because anytime this involves the disbursement of cash, and this will be cash that will be given to teachers, is that correct, Mr. Sponsor? This is cash? Okay.
Yes.
Well, before I go to my question, how will this be disbursed to the teachers on a monthly basis, on an annual basis?
It's annually,
Annually.
once
And-
a year.
And
Madam.
do they have to give receipts for their purchase, or it is just a
No, Mr. President.
so once they have it,
Right. Expense.
so how do we ensure that this is used for that purpose? Because it is a great purpose, but we want to be ensured that it's used for that purpose.
This is an allowance, Mr. President, so who's going to give a certification? It's not subject for liquidation, so this is an allowance.
But my question is, how do we know it is used for that purpose? We do not know.
Well, we trust that teachers, Mr. President.
So because there is a shortage, we assume that the funding we make available will be used to meet that shortage. And I
Yes.
assume that for the general population. But
Yes.
I also assure you that there will be
Okay.
those who do not use
If you
it
have
for that
any
purpose.
amendments, Madam President.
I'm
we would
getting
very
there.
much
I'm
to,
getting there. I'm just trying to set the basis to determine if there is a need for an amendment. Is there a need for protection? Would your resource persons, Mr. President, know of any other allowance-based, do I call this a subsidy grant, of a similar nature that there's no need for liquidation?
1 minute suspension, Madam President.
Session.
Mr. President, can I answer my own question? Because it is not this representation's desire to confuse or to make the issue complicated. No, I think everyone recognizes that the teachers are the first after the family to, kumbaga sila yung nag-aambag. Sila yung nagdadagdag sa kung anumang kakulangan sa classroom. Alam naman natin yon. My question stemmed from the practical the situation where what are the boundaries on how this is used? So if I may go further, for example, ang isang teacher, walang mali siya po yung tanong ko. Kunyari ang isang teacher, ginamit niya dahil sa isang bata na nakita niyang laging gutom, laging kulang sa pagkain. And I have so much respect for the teacher who will use their personal money para tulungan. Meron pang magre-regalo ng sapatos. Covered ba yon? Kasi baka naman mamaya, hindi yun covered. Siya pa mapagalitan. Siya pa masabihan na misuse niya yung fund and yet ginamit niya para sa ikabubuti ng bata. But I don't think that's covered by a cash allowance.
I do understand the point of the lady senator. Tama po yun. Pero ito pong purpose natin dito is for the teacher supplies allowance. Pero kung gugustuhin po nilang gamitin yon para makatulong sa pwede rin siguro.
Yun nga nga ang point ko, Mr. President, ang hirap ng siguro. Kasi we are governed by laws and we are governed, and I will look at the
Maybe we can
Secretary
put
of
it
DBM
on record
this
na
moment,
pwede.
na baka naman, or COA, si COA pa yata ang ano, ayokong may COA dito. So, sa akin, Mr. President, paano ba? Do I amend this? It's a question, it's a genuine question. Do I amend this to include more than supplies, but to any expense that the teacher sees is needed by the child? Yun ba dapat ang scope natin?
Yeah, Mr. President, I think the lady senator has a point there. At saka nagnad na po ang ating Secretary of Finance na pwede.
Pati Secretary of
Put it
Finance.
on record, ha? We have plus a DBM Secretary. So nandito na yung mga support group. So I don't see any problem
Yeah.
there, Mr.
Mr.
President.
President, Majority Floor Leader, I don't intend to delay this. Our secretaries have been here for more than 2 hours for another matter, for a very important bill. For the purchase. I don't know. I think I have to consult the body. I am looking at the Minority Floor Leader. Okay ba yun na dagdagan natin to na the grant of cash allowance authorized in this act shall cover all public school teachers engage in teaching basic kasi it doesn't say it doesn't even say that, unlike before it's supplies. Tinanggal na yan eh. Dati kasi it says supplies. So is it really meant to be open-ended?
Mr. President, it's
The
in
next
section.
section.
It's in section
Section 4.
4
All public school teachers shall be granted a teacher supplies allowance. Okay, for
for the purchase.
tangible. O di yun na nga, nalimit natin yon.
Right.
For the purchase of tangible or
Tangible,
intangible
right.
teaching supplies and materials, and for the implementation of or conduct of various learning delivery modalities. O do I want to say, and for any need a teacher deems suited for the benefit of the learner? It's a question, Your Honor. I'm looking at the Minority Floor Leader because paano nga kung bumili siya ng pagkain para sa estudyante?
Maybe
Paano kung may
maybe ask the minority floor leader. You want to
Kunyari,
interject?
narinig niya may ubo. Isang buwan na, may ubo pa rin. Siya nagpagamot. Teaching supplies ba yun? Hindi na siya teaching supplies eh.
It's not teaching
But the
supplies.
truth is, and I ask His Honor to ask his advisors, hindi ba't kasama yan sa ginagastos ng isang teacher? Kasama yun. Yung tsinelas ng bata, may bumibili ng so that's the reality. And I don't want His Honor to have to come back and amend this. Let's ask the advisors exactly what these teachers spend their money on, and is Congress willing to be clear about this expense so that we write into the law exactly the situation the circumstances that we know occur.
The nature of the measure, Mr. President, is about the teaching supplies allowance. So unless amendahan nga natin, may babaguhin tayo doon. May I ask the
Tanggalin na si teacher supply. Sorry to cut you off, Your Honor, pero lakas ng boses ng majority leader, napatingin ako.
Okay, so
Teachers allow, okay, ito, just a thought. Teachers allowance, delete the word supplies, and then in the definition, allowance means supplies and any, please.
President,
and other expense?
Yes, Senator Agaras, recognized.
maybe we could, subject to style, just insert the phrase and other expenses incidental
To the delivery of
the learning
education,
of the child.
something like that.
Yeah.
I'm very okay with that. I think that will cover
That's something to start.
the reality of what the teachers
Because that's what you're
spend
referring
for.
to, Your Honor. It's,
Yes.
Incidental expenses.
Subject to style, so we can amend, we can accept the proposal if
Amendment to the amendment.
the amendment to the amendment, if the sponsor will accept, and then subject to style.
What does the sponsor have to
accept.
say?
I accept.
Since the
Subject
sponsor
to style.
accepts the amendment is approved, subject to style.
Mr. President, I thank everyone on the floor because I feel this was an important amendment that will address the reality for teachers that they spend for anything and everything to assist their learners as if they were their own child. And I did not want them to be bound by our definition if in fact they are spending for something na ikububuti naman ng estudyante nila. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Pia Cayetano.
Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Senator Pia. We understand where the distinguished lady is coming from. And we thank the interventions of our dear colleagues, the Minority Leader, Senator Angara, and Senator Cayetano. Mr. President, there are no other individual amendments. I move to close the period of individual amendments. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, period of individual amendments hereby closed.
Thank you, Mr. President. And with the consent of the body, I move that we approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1964, subject to style. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. Senate Bill number 1964 is approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1964. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Move for a minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Okay, session suspended.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, at this juncture and with the permission of the body, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2020 under Committee Report number 58. This is the Maharlika Investment Fund Act of 2023. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, Senator Coco Pimentel
There is
is
an
recognized,
objection.
Minority Floor Leader.
For lack of quorum, Mr. President, I move that we adjourn our session, Mr. President.
Is there an objection from the Majority Leader?
I object, Mr. President. I think we have
Sir,
enough.
I can ask for 1 minute suspension.
Yes, Mr. President. Thank you.
There is a question on quorum duly objected by the Majority Floor Leader. Should you want to have a roll call? We may have a roll call
If that is the
Majority
pleasure
Leader and
of
Minority Leader.
the body,
So
Mr.
wishes.
President, just to establish, Mr. President, that indeed
That we have a quorum.
we have a quorum, Mr. President.
Please proceed, Secretary. There's a motion requested by the Minority Floor Leader.
Roll call of members, the Honorable Senator Angara, Senator Binay, Senator Cayetano Alan, Senator Cayetano Pia, Senator De La Rosa, Senator Ejercito, Senator Escudero, Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lapid, Senator Ligarda, Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator Villar Mark, the Senate President.
Present. Pwede naman bilangin yan. May ano. 14 kanina, plus Pia and Senator Aymin, Senator Cayetano. Kulang ng kape. Bigyan ng kape. Bigyan ng kape. So, magbibilang ako. 16. With 16 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move for the previous question, Mr. President, that we consider Senate Bill number 2020 under Committee Report number 58. I so move, Mr. President.
There be no objection, motion is approved.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measure is that we have sponsored the bill, and I now move to open the period of interpellations and debate. I move that we recognize the sponsor of the measure, Senator Mark Villar, and to interpellate is Senator Bato de la Rosa. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved. We'd like to recognize the distinguished gentleman from the region of Davao and Bohol, Senator Bato de la Rosa.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, would the good sponsor yield to a few clarificatory questions?
Yes, I yield to the good senator.
Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. These questions have been asked in other fora, but for purposes of enriching the records of the Senate, I would like to ask the following clarificatory questions. Number one, Mr. Good Sponsor, the Maharlika Investment Fund is considered a sovereign wealth fund. For the record of this body, may we know what are considered a sovereign wealth fund?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. And for the information of everyone, the public, a sovereign wealth fund is a special purpose investment fund that is owned by the state. Of course, the purposes vary for the investment fund, but in general, these funds are used in order to maximize the assets of the state for various reasons, and also to promote the development of the state which owns the fund, and to generate a robust return for the state.
Thank you, good sponsor. Para sa kaalaman ng ating mga kababayan na nanonood at nakikinig sa diskusyon natin ngayon, ano ba ang pagkakaiba nitong Maharlika Investment Fund sa ibang government-owned and controlled corporations na ang mandato rin ay mag-invest at magpalago ng pera ng gobyerno?
Opo. Itong investment fund, yung sovereign investment fund, ay mag-i-invest po sa mga projects na makaka-generate ng mas malaking return po sa gobyerno. So, ito po ay isang form of equity, tinatawag po nilang equity, yung mga shares ng mga kumpanya, and makaka-generate din po ng mga funds na galing po sa abroad, galing din po sa mga institutional investors, at itong mga pondo ay pwedeng gamitin ng gobyerno para sa mga flagship projects katulad ng infrastructure projects, mga proyekto po sa agrikultura. So, pag na-invest po yung mga pondo, syempre, makaka-generate din ng returns for government. So, mamamaximize din po ang mga assets ng gobyerno at magkakaroon ng income ang gobyerno pag nagkaroon po ng ganitong klaseng fund. Yun ang objective po ng isang sovereign wealth fund.
Thank you, good sponsor. Next question is, why is there a need to establish a Maharlika Investment Fund? Ano ang magagawa ng Maharlika Investment Fund Corporation na hindi kayang gawin ng existing government financial institutions?
Ako po, galing po ako sa infrastructure dahil ako po yung dating secretary ng DPWH. At nakita ko rin po na marami po mga infrastructure projects na nangangailangan ng karagdagang pondo at minsan hindi rin kaya ng GAA or General Appropriations Act ng gobyerno. Kaya kailangan natin magkaroon ng ibang fund sources. At ang kagandahan po ng Maharlika, ito po ay magbibigay ng additional fund sources para sa ating mga infrastructure projects. Pero hindi naman exclusive po sa infrastructure dahil pwede rin tayo mag-invest sa agricultural sector, sa energy sector. At ito po ay isang additional source of funding na wala po tayo ngayon. Dahil sa gobyerno, ang source of funding natin ay yung utang natin na galing sa ibang bansa at yung internal funds ng gobyerno, yung GAA. Pag nagkaroon po ng Maharlika Fund,
makakakuha din tayo ng investments na galing sa iba. Ang tawag po nila ay equity investment. So, hindi lang utang at hindi lang national government ang source ng funding natin. Magkakaroon din po tayo ng equity funding na galing sa ibang bansa at galing din sa mga local investors.
Thank you. The proposed authorized capital stock of the Maharlika Investment Corporation under the bill is 500 billion pesos. May we know what are the GOCCs which have the same level of capital stock? How is the performance of such GOCC? May kinita ba ang national government mula sa mga GOCC na ito?
One example is the land bank with an authorized capital stock of 800 billion pesos and a net income of 40 billion pesos. So that's an example of a GOCC with similar or higher capitalization than the Maharlika Investment Corporation.
Thank you again. One of the sources of funding for the national government contribution to the capital of MIC is the 10% government share in PAGCOR. May we know how much is the estimated annual income of PAGCOR so we will have an idea as to how much will be allocated to the Maharlika Investment Corporation?
May computation po ang PAGCOR. So may 55 billion pesos. Ito po yung 22 PAGCOR earnings. Out of the 55 billion pesos, may 5% franchise tax to the BIR. And so minus the 5%, may 52.8, of which half goes to retained by PAGCOR and the other half is national government. So sa 26.4 billion ng national government, magkakaroon po ng more 10% ang Maharlika Investment Corporation. So with that, ang estimate po based on this year's income is 2.64 billion ang share ng PAGCOR sa Maharlika Investment Corporation, ang magiging capital contribution ng PAGCOR sa Maharlika Investment Corporation.
2.64
billion pesos.
64 billion.
2.64 billion.
2.6 billion.
Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you. The National Development Company is the Philippines' leading state-owned enterprise investing in diverse industries, which includes development projects. Why is there a need to establish the MIF and the MIC? Would the NDC cease to exist after the establishment of the MIC? If no, how can we reconcile this on the proposal of the government to streamline the bureaucracy?
Yes, this issue was raised, Mr. President, in our committee hearings. And the NDC expressed their opinion that actually the Maharlika Investment Corporation can be complementary to their goals. Of course, the NDC has been in existence for a long time and they do support small businesses to reach the next level. The Maharlika Corporation can also invest in other government projects, but they have to, of course, yield a certain amount that will be acceptable to the board of directors to MIC. So to answer your question, the NDC and the MIC can be complementary to each other. So they can coexist. And in fact, the NDC expressed their opinion that they are supportive of the Maharlika Investment Corporation.
So, klaro tayo dyan na hindi madidissolve ang NDC.
Hindi po madidissolve, Mr. President.
Thank you. Is there, next question is there a cap on the administrative and operational expenses of the MIC? How does it compare with the administrative and operational expenses of other GOCCs? How many employees are we planning to hire? How many financial consultants would we need to have a functional Maharlika Investment Corporation?
Of course, the amount allocated for administrative is comparable to other GOCCs, and that amount is 2%, which is provided for in the law, which says that there's a cap of 2% on the administrative expense. With regards to the with regards to the manpower that is needed, of course, there's a the board of directors will have the discretion on how to use it. Of course, of course, at the same time, respecting the 2% cap that is provided for in the law.
Thank you. So, kung proposed authorized capital stock is 500 billion, 2% of 500 billion is
Yung that's authorized but not paid up. The paid up is 120.
120.
120 billion. Well, of course, hindi naman one time dahil may contribution din yung over a few years yung BSP. So, but more or less the cap on the initial capital is 125 billion pesos.
Thank you. Marami kasi nagsasabi na mukhang malaki daw itong 2% or justified lang.
We feel that is based on our discussions, we feel that it is at par with other GOCCs.
Thank you. Next question is,
The DP, ganun din.
bilang isang investment company, applicable ang lagi nating naririnig na high risk, high return. May we know for the record which countries have established a successful sovereign wealth fund? How much is their annual profit or income? And may we also know which sovereign wealth fund has incurred the biggest loss in world history? How much is their loss? What provisions do we have to ensure that we will not experience the same fate? Para bagang sabihin natin na hindi na tayo natuto sa ibang bansa. So dapat alam natin yung history ng sovereign wealth fund. So can you?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to share some other just some names: the Norway Investment Fund, the China Investment Corp, Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, Vietnamese State Capital Investment Corporation. I think it's important to look at these state funds not in the short-term perspective. At anyone, when it comes to investments, they look at it through maybe a minimum 5-year up to 10-year period. So at any one time, you might see there might be some dips, but in general, for instance, the Norwegian fund, the Norway fund, it averaged over average growth rate of 10%. But if you capture, there might be times where you capture a loss in 1 year, but you have to look at it over the lifespan. I-average nyo po, ang tawag dun CAGR, the cumulative average growth rate. So, ang importante po sa ganitong pondo, yung titignan po natin yung long-term return. So, in general, most of these returns, the target of the Maharlika is a minimum around 8%. But there are other funds, such as, I'll give you an example, the Norway fund was able to achieve a cumulative average of about 10%. But of course, if you're looking at, there were certain years na hindi naman ganun kataas. May certain years na mas mataas, pero yung average ang tinitignan natin, Mr. President. So I think that nothing in this world is 100%. But of course, that's why we have experts there, and we have, you're asking what will prevent us. Well, we have our economic management. We have a advisory board composed of the DBM, composed of the treasurer, composed of the NEDA, that we be able to advise them. We have a board of directors who have 9 members representing the private sector and also those who put in capital in the company. So these are very respected, very competent personalities in finance, and we feel that they can generate the returns that are needed in the Maharlika.
Can you cite to us an example or anong bansa yung the worst record ng sovereign wealth fund nila? Anong bansa yung pinakapalpak yung nangyari sa kanilang sovereign wealth fund? Para at least,
Malaysia.
Yes, let's say, I'll give you an example, okay? Let's say what I was talking about. There was some, like for instance, one of the worst at one point was the first half of 2022 for the Norway Wealth Fund, which was negative paper losses of negative 14%. That was during a certain period. But again, when you analyze it over an extended period, over 10 years, overall, the return for the generate for government surpasses that period. But again, that's how when it comes to any kind of investment funds, it's not a straight line. It has an upward trajectory, but it doesn't mean it's straight returns. So there will be the economy is it's not an exact science, so there will be bad months, there will be bad years, but overall, similar to what the PSE, if you invest in the PSE fund, it has an average growth rate, but there will be periods where the PSE is down. So ganun din lang yan. May times na down yung PSE, but if kung i-compute mo yung average growth rate, it still beats, for instance, the treasury bill rate. So I think that's the important nuance of these funds that we have to understand. It's that there can at any one period a fund can be negative, but this is paper losses. But you have to look at the performance of the fund over a certain time period, and that should be the basis of the performance of the fund. So when it comes to Maharlika, we have an 8%. It's very achievable, we believe, and I can speak for myself, being the department secretary, that I've seen a lot of infrastructure projects that were vetted by the NEDA that achieved a IRR of more than 15%. So there are projects that can generate the income for government, and I believe the Maharlika has enough safeguards to ensure that we will achieve a good rate for return for the government.
So balikan ko lang, Mr. President, yung binanggit mo about Netherlands, ano yung bansa yun?
Norway.
Norway. Buhay pa ba yung investment?
Oo naman.
Yung kanilang investment fund ngayon?
Oo naman.
Okay pa?
Okay pa. Okay na, okay
Hindi
pa.
pa sila nagsisisi?
Hindi.
Very good. Sige.
Hindi pa nagsisisi.
Last question, Mr. President.
Yes.
Did you find my interpolation friendly one? That's all. Thank you, Mr. President. Majority Leader, maraming salamat. Thank you for the answers coming from our.
I'd like to thank the friendly senator. I'd like to thank the friendly senator.
What's your answer?
That's why I'd like to thank the friendly senator. So being friendly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, good sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Bato de la Rosa. Mr. President, next to interpolate is the distinguished lady from the great province of Pangasinan and Iloilo, no other than Senator Grace Poe. I move that she be recognized.
Our distinguished colleague, Senator Grace Poe, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is just a prelude to my other questions later on next week. But just a clarification with some points that were raised by our senator from Bohol and Davao. He mentioned that PAGCOR is actually contributing around 2 billion plus to the fund.
That's a estimate based on this year's revenue generated. It's basically a model. Because we don't know what the income will be next year. But if this was this year, if there was a share this year, that is the amount that would have been remitted to government.
But how much is more or less the average earnings of PAGCOR in a year? Because I think PAGCOR is bigger than BDO and BPI combined, right? Their earnings, or is that?
I believe the earnings of PAGCOR is approximately 55 to 60 billion a year. But of course, this is a moving figure.
Okay, but I think that, if Land Bank is giving a substantial amount and others, and we're having sometimes trouble tracking what PAGCOR is spending, I think it would actually be better for PAGCOR to contribute more to a fund like this where it can actually be tracked. That's my view on the matter. The second point is, do you know what the average inflation rate now here in the Philippines is?
I think 6%. 6 point.
About 6%.
I think the latest inflation figure was about 6.6%, if I'm not mistaken. 6.6%.
Okay.
Yes.
How much is the average yield of a fund? Lately, there's been a dip, but more or less, it's about 6 to 8%.
More or less, again, of course, in any fund, ideally, you'd want to beat inflation and of course, whatever premium you place on the risk for the fund.
So you always use as an example the Norway fund. What is their best year in terms of the yield for their the return? Like how many percent?
Uh,
If now it's a negative 14%.
yes, that is
About
correct. That was in
the
the first half of 2022, the returned paper losses of negative 14%.
Okay, but what's the best year that they had? How many percent?
What was the best year? 7.5. Yeah, Mr. President, if you just give us a few minutes, to get that particular information.
While you're researching
Yes.
that figure, the reason why I bring this up is there is, I believe, an administrative fee of about 2%.
That is correct.
Okay, so if you have that 2%, plus if you are to factor in the average return that you could expect, that means you have to be performing at least 8%. That means you have to surpass predictions or basically what's the yield of at least the past 2 years.
Ideally, in any fund, you'd want to beat inflation. Although I have to say, the inflation now is quite high relative to what it has been in the past. So I would think that if this 6% continues, of course, you'd have to revise your targets. But I think the assumption is the inflation is in a downwards trajectory.
Well, that's the assumption, unfortunately. When the economy opened up again after COVID, the reverse happened. So I would like to probably, because informally, I was talking to our Secretary of Finance, and he said that it's 2% at the maximum in terms of the administrative fee. Are we still being a little too generous? 2% of what total amount are we talking about?
We're talking 2% of the total funds under administration of the fund.
Which is how much?
Initially, it's 100. The initial paid up is 75
75
billion pesos. Yes.
75 billion pesos.
Eventually, 1.5.
Okay, maybe later on, I think we would also like to clarify the qualification of the board members.
Yes. Also, just for the information of Mr. President, just for the information, just to answer the question earlier, it was the highest rate achieved by Norway was 25%.
That's quite promising, but
For 1 year, of course.
for 1 year, hopefully. But again, we're talking about Norway with actually excess income. What do you call it? Surplus income. Tayo naman, we're actually pulling from resources that are already allotted. But then, okay. I think that the question would also be important if we raise the qualification of the board members. How many board members will you have here in the Maharlika Fund?
9 directors.
9 directors. Based on what qualifications? Who appoints them?
The advisory board will recommend, and the president will appoint these members.
The advisory board is
Comprised of the DBM, the NEDA, and the Treasury.
Are there qualifications like, let's say, experience in finance for so many years?
Yes, it's here in the bill. The specifics, actually, they're quite extensive. The qualifications for it's here, section 20. The regular, and I quote, the regular director shall be citizens at least 35 years of age, must be of good moral standing and reputation, of recognized probity and independence, and have substantial experience and expertise in any of the following: corporate governance and administration, investment in financial assets, management of investments in the global and local markets. The regular director shall be appointed by the President of the Philippines upon recommendation of the advisory board for a period of 3 years.
Okay, so extensive background, but there's no like 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. There's no time period, just extensive, which can be
Yes, this was
subject to.
contemplated upon, but we thought that the best would be to include this in the IRR.
Okay, well, Mr. President, because of the lateness of the hour also, and we just wanted to get the ball rolling. But certainly there are more detailed questions also I'd like to ask eventually, maybe next week. So with that, Mr. President, that's all for now. Thank you. Thank you to our good sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Your Honors. May I just ask the Secretary to increase the air conditioning in the room? Is it only me who's feeling hot or is everybody feeling? Yeah, strengthen the air conditioning. Lower the temperature because it's a bit warm. Thank you, dear Secretariat. Yes, Majority Leader.
If our Senate President pro tempore, Mr. President, ay naiinitan, that means it's really.
Really hot, because he always feels cold.
Yes, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2020. I so move, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Majority Leader. If there's no objection to the motion to suspend, the motion is approved.
Move for a minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
with the permission of the body, this manifestation pertains to the subcommittee on Senate Bill number 238. This is the Northern Antique Protected Seascape and Landscape Act of 2022 with Senator Sani Angara as chairperson and manifested on the floor on February 8, 2023. On this note, Mr. President, may I manifest for the record that Senate President Pro Tempore, Senator Lauren Legarda, be made as co-chairperson for the said subcommittee. I so manifest, Mr. President.
There being no objection, is this for the beautiful province of Antique?
Yes, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion's approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, in line with the letter from the office of Senator Rafi Tulfo as delegated by the chairperson of Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources, Senator Jinggoy Estrada, dated May 15, 2023, and pursuant to Section 25 of the Republic Act number 11641, or the Department of Migrant Workers Act. Our pet measure, Mr. President. I move that we proceed with the Senate President's designation of members of the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on Migrant Workers. I so move, Mr. President.
I would read all the names. Unfortunately, nobody gave me a list here.
May I be allowed, Mr.
Yes.
President?
Somebody should give me a list.
May I be allowed, Mr. President?
Yeah, here it is, Your Honor. The following members are hereby designated as members of the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee in relation to Republic Act 11641. The chairperson, of course, is Senator Rafi Tulfo. The chairperson of the Committee on Migrant Workers. The chairman is Senator Jinggoy Estrada, chairperson of the Committee on Labor, Employment, Human Resources. Members are Senator Christopher Bongo, Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr., and two members from the minority, Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel and Senator Risa Ontiveros. So designated.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, May 16, 2023. So move, Mr. President.
There be no objection. The session is adjourned till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Tuesday, May 16, 2023. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. President.